afternoon. My name is Paul Horan. I'm a Carlovian. I'm an assistant professor in Trinity College in Dublin and a keen local historian. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, some of the rather curious, interesting and more happy historical notions of Carlow. A bit like what a lot of people don't know, if you think about it, is that Carlow was the capital of Ireland from 1361 to 1394. It was made capital by a fella called the Duke of Antwerp, Lionel, who spent 500 quid building a wall around the town at the time. And if people want to know who he is historically, he's actually the son of Longshanks, who appears in Braveheart. So he's the son of the fella who killed Braveheart. That's just one fact. I think many people will know of the Battle of Waterloo and the Duke of Wellington, but might not know that the Duke of Wellington had a house outside Carlow called Erinville, in which he kept a mistress. And that mistress went on to be educated in Winchester in the UK and was a dowager duchess, I believe. Carlow also, the county possesses a book of the equivalence of the Book of Kells, which again is little known. It's recently been cleaned and it's called the Book of Molin. It predates the Book of Kelly, as the Americans might call it, or the Book of Kells, by 100 years. It's guaranteed Irish, unlike the Book of Kells, and it's housed beside the Book of Kells. And if you visit Trinity College Library in Dublin any day of the week, you can see the Book of Molin, which effectively is a pocket-sized Bible of the period, akin to the Book of Kells and the Book of Armagh. Very colourful. There are 4 reliefs of the evangelists in it, which are amazing. And obviously the book was very dirty, because when they cleaned the book, the colours of the evangelist actually changed, which is really interesting. Carlow we could also call Sugar Town. Carlow was where the sugar factory was established in the 1920s by W.D. Cosgrave, who was then president of the executive of the Free State. And by the 1940s, with the contribution of men and women from Carlow on the making of sugar in the town and the growing of beet by the farmers in the county, Ireland became sugar sufficient, independent of any need for sugar importation from outside the country. Probably one really curious guy who I like, who's a Trinity head, is a fellow by the name of Samuel Houghton. Samuel Houghton was what's known as a Victorian polymath. He knew loads about lots of things. He was a geologist, a mathematician, a doctor. He liked chopping up things to see what they were. The reptile house in Dublin Zoo was called after this local man. But what he's famous for is 2 things. First thing he's famous for is the tidal tables around this country that we still use today were worked out by a man from Burn Street in County Carlow. But more macabrely, in 1866 he wrote a paper called On Hanging, and he came up with a formula for hanging people humanely. So successfully, actually, he took all the fun out of hanging, and public hanging stopped within a couple of years of his formulas being used. I'm not going to tell you what the formulas are, but let's say it was extremely efficient, and the British execution of Pierrepoint developed them to such an extent that if you were hung using Houghton's formulas and Pierrepoint's notions, you'd be dead quicker than a gunshot in 15 seconds. So these are just some of the characters that we know locally. There is another lady. I'm a nurse. I teach nurses by background. And there's a mother, Agatha O'Brien. And she was a cooper's daughter, and she grew up in Greycullen, which is the other side of the bridge from Carlow, still in the urban district. And this Carlow lady, before her death at the age of 35 in Chicago from cholera, had established the biggest hospital in Chicago, which still exists to this day, and the biggest secondary girls' school college in the US of A in Chicago with more than 2,000 students. So these are just some of the characters. You've got Dargan, who grew up nearby. Dargan is the man credited with making the railway system, the great Victorian Irish railway system, William Dargan, from about the 1830s through the famine in the 1840s. He's quite the character. And I think I'm going to leave you with this one, because this is a nugget. Many of you who might know anything about British history know the tragic story of the Tudors and the Plantagenets. And there's a tragic story of the young princes in the Tower of London. And a very bad English king, Richard III, he basically disappeared the young princes. But what a lot of people, again, interestingly and curiously don't know, is that one of those young princes, Richard of Shrewsbury, was actually a lord of Carlow at the time of his death, because he'd actually married a lady who actually inherited Carlow Castle and all the lands around it by the name of Anne Mowbray, and they were married at the age of 5 and 4 in St. Stephen's Castle. And just to be generous, this is my favourite Carlow happy story. You may have heard about Shakespeare and his famous plays. Well, I can tell you that 6 characters from Shakespeare walked around Carlow town and county, but the most famous of them all is Henry V. A horse, a kingdom for my horse. And he was knighted outside Carlow by Richard II in 1399, and there is actually a medieval image of the knighting of Henry Monmouth, who went on to be Henry V, Battle of Agincourt, etc., knighted in Carlow and its environs, 1399.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon.
Absolutely incredible, Paul. Thank you very much.